Tomorrow heralds the start of Plastic-Free July, a global movement that works towards a world free of plastic waste. And no industry is more acutely aware of its plastic impact than the beauty industry, which is why I'm dedicating all of my episodes this month to discussing beauty's addiction to plastic. But before we delve into the world of packaging, and don't worry, that's coming in one of the next episodes, I first want us to take a closer look at the formulation itself in the bottle. Now, here at Formula Botanica, we only work with organic and natural ingredients in our award-winning online formulation courses. So I was naively surprised to learn that the mainstream beauty industry uses hundreds and hundreds of different liquid and nano microplastics in their formulations. After all, how else does your nail varnish glide onto your nails? Or how else does your makeup take on the right consistency? How else do you add film formers to your hair care? Now, I know that our students would have a lot to say in response to those questions, but the fact is that microplastics are still everywhere. And I promise you that some of the information you'll learn in this episode today will really shock you. So join me for a discussion with the Plastic Soup Foundation in which we explore the microplastics inside your formulations. Welcome to Green Beauty Conversations, the podcast that challenges you to think about how you buy, use, make, and sell your natural beauty formulations. We tackle topics that will make you think and encourage debate about green beauty with your friends, followers, or customers. I'm your host, Lorraine Dahlmeyer. I'm a chartered environmentalist, biologist, and the CEO of award-winning online organic cosmetic formulation school, Formula Botanica. We have thousands and thousands of students in over 180 countries around the world who study with us to become organic beauty formulators and entrepreneurs. Visit our website at formulabotanica.com to try our free online formulation course. And if you want to be the first person to know what's happening in green beauty, make sure you subscribe to this podcast in your favorite podcast app. So in today's episode, I'm joined by Madhuri Prabhakar, the project leader and campaigner of the Beat the Microbead campaign by the Plastic Soup Foundation. Her career in the beauty industry started almost 6 years ago when she started campaigning against microplastics inside cosmetics. And in this short time, she learned a lot about microplastic pollution and even had to say goodbye to some of her own favorite beauty brands. Now she's passionate about and striving to make the beauty industry free of plastic ingredients. Madhuri believes that we all deserve to care for ourselves while caring for our planet. Hi, Madhuri. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm really excited to be here. It's my first podcast experience, and I'm really curious how it's going to go, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, I'm honored that this is your first podcast, and I'm really looking forward to this chat as well, because I know there are going to be a lot of people who will feel quite shocked after they've listened to this episode. So let's dive straight in. Whenever we talk about plastics in beauty, people automatically assume that it's only the packaging that contains plastic. But do beauty products actually contain plastic in the formulations as well? And can you give us some examples of what you might find in cosmetics?
Yes, you're absolutely right. People always think it's packaging. I had a conversation with somebody I met for the first time a couple weeks ago, and they asked me, what do I do for a job? So I explained to them I work for a campaign that is about microplastics in cosmetics. And they were like, oh yeah, well, plastic, it's a huge problem, right? The packaging, it's a lot of waste. And I said, no, it's inside also. And they were a bit shocked, like, what do you mean inside? It was like a moment where we had to like go over it again and again, and they were just not able to understand that it's also inside the product. So it's a concept that people also don't quickly get, because how can plastic be inside of the products? But yes, indeed, there's a lot of plastic inside products, and it's in all kinds of products you can imagine. There is not a cosmetic or beauty product that we didn't find plastic in, like in the whole product category. So it's from toothpaste to your lipstick, it's in your shampoo, in your sunscreen, and you put sunscreen all over your body, and then you run straight in the ocean. So yeah, that's not ideal. But it's also very difficult to understand what they mean, because you can see at the back of the products the ingredients, and sometimes it's easy to understand, and you might know, okay, I see polyethylene or nylon, and that sounds similar because you've seen those or heard those terms somewhere. But sometimes it's also quite difficult terminology that you have no idea what it means, like styrene copolymer or acrylic copolymer. You you can't know what exactly those ingredients mean.
It's a big problem, obviously. How many types of microplastic would you typically find in beauty products?
Well, if I'm looking through our campaigning history, we started, as it called, my campaign, it's called Beat the Microbead. And it was about microbeads. We started and we're like these 5 kind of ingredients, and they are very particular in toothpaste and scrubs. You could see them from your eyes, so you could tell that, okay, yeah, this particle is plastic. And then more research went into it, and we found there were different kinds of microplastics. And at around 2015, we were scanning for 62 or so, 65 kind of ingredients. And now with all the research and all the knowledge that we have, it's like over 1,100 ingredients we're scanning from right now. So, and it keeps growing. That list keeps growing.
Wow.
Massive amount.
That's incredible. Over 1,100 different types of, I'm presuming, mainly liquid microplastics that are potentially
ingredients that we know of till now.
That we know of.
Exactly. It keeps growing. So
that is incredible. Okay, so looking at the Beat the Microbead campaign, and I very much encourage everyone listening to go and check out your website and your app, but we'll come to that. You talk about microplastics on the website, but you also mentioned something called skeptical microplastics. Can you please explain to me what this means?
Well, let me start by saying that it has been a gigantic task for a small organization like ours to make sense of this situation, because it is quite difficult to make sense of. So we came up with this traffic light system to categorize products, so red, orange, and green. So red category of products we scan via ingredients or microplastics that have been mentioned in some sort of research or study, for example, by UNEP or TAU. And then we started noticing different kind of ingredients that sound similar to the ones that are in the study, but with some sort of variation. And then it was quite a long list of things when we started writing down. So we started putting in this new category called orange, skeptical microplastics, that we're skeptical of because we found some sort of data that it has some toxicology or some persistence or biodegradability data, but most of it was missing. It was a big question mark. So it's like our list of question mark ingredients that sounds way too fishy and similar to the ones that are on our red list. So we named it skeptical microplastics. So it's that we ask industry and formulators to be transparent about it. And we mention people, if you have any information regarding this on environmental impact, please contact us. And then we can reevaluate ingredients on that list. But so far it's just been growing. There has not been much information to put ingredients out of that list.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And fascinating how much more knowledge and research needs to be done into some of these ingredients. So do you think most customers, most shoppers know that they're applying liquid plastics to their skin, their hair, their nails, in their toothpaste? Do you think most people know this?
No, they don't. They have no idea. A lot of people, as I said before, they just can't understand the fact that there's inside the products. And that's why we came up with the app, to make it easy for people, because it's a complicated topic. There's like a list of 1,100 ingredients. You can't learn them by head. So that's why we made this tool as an easy way to people to check products and scan. So how the app works is you take a product, you take a picture of the ingredient list, and the app does it work, and it tells you if there are ingredients of concern in there. And then people don't have to memorize and learn all of these difficult names. And then that's a tool for people to make a choice about the products they want to use.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I encourage everyone who's listening to go and download the Beat the Microbead app. We'll put the link with the show notes and on our website as well. So please do go check it out. I've been using it. I actually had to judge a big beauty award the other day, and my whole office was covered in products, and I actually got the app out and I was scanning a few of the products in the natural category who contained microplastics. So it was very useful for me as well. Let's talk about impact for a minute, because I'm guessing there are two options once we apply our plastic face cream or lipsticks or toothpaste. It either gets washed off into the waterways or it somehow ends up in our bodies. So do we have any idea of the health or environmental impacts of these microplastics and liquid microplastics, or the scale of what we're dealing with here?
The environmental impact has been quite daunting in the past couple of years. There has been so much data, research study, evidence that came out. The European Chemical Agency estimates that 3,800 tons of microplastics are released into the environment through the use of everyday cosmetic and care products in Europe. And that's, if you really think about it, that's like 7 kilos of microplastics washing down our drains in Europe from cosmetic products alone. And we actually believe that it's a very conservative estimation by European Chemical Agency because they work with limited definition of microplastics. If you really have a broader understanding, this number might be 25 times bigger, the amount of pollution. So that's quite a shock. And that's only cosmetic products. Imagine all the other sources of microplastics. It's a huge number of pollutions. There is no corner on Earth left untouched by microplastics. It has infiltrated our food chains. The highest point of our planet, Himalayas, microplastics have been found there. The lowest planet, Mariana Trench of the Earth, microplastics have been found there. Microplastics have been found in our blood, in our placenta, in our lungs, the presence of microplastics. And it's quite concerning how much we are surrounded by this and how much it has also infiltrated our bodies. What it does to our body exactly, that's still a topic of more research and studies. But there are estimations and researches that show that it has been linked to a lot of diseases, chronic diseases, but also there's chemicals used in plastic that can disrupt your hormone system and impact your fertility or neurodevelopment in children. So we definitely need more studies to have certain view on it. But the evidence that exists right now is already quite grim. I just don't understand why we cannot already, based on this warning signs, make substantial steps.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I was reading an article the other day that suggested that alongside like the water cycle and the carbon cycle, we're now also creating a plastic cycle, because these microplastics are so small that they actually evaporate up into the clouds and get rained down on us again. We are turning into plastic humans. And I think I'm glad we're highlighting this on the podcast today. Plastic Soup Foundation and the Beat the Microbead campaign recently issued a report about how many microplastics are found in our cosmetics. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we thought that this was a very, very crucial point to come up with something like this, because in Europe, we are working on legislation that might ban microplastics next year. And we have some really big concerns about that legislation, because the definition of microplastics, well, how do you restrict something? In order to restrict something, you need to define it. The definition that is now proposed by European Chemical Agency has been very limiting, and it excludes liquids, plastics and nanoplastics, and we are really concerned about that. So we talked to people and experts around us, and we kind of put all our concerns in the form of this report, that we don't think that this should be excluded from this legislation and this regulation. And then we also looked into our database to kind of show people and regulators how much plastic are we talking if we consider this broader view on microplastics. And we took some of the biggest cosmetic producers in Europe and their popular brands, and then we looked on all the data that the Beat Microbead users sent us, and we analyzed it, and we found out that almost 9 out of 10 products contains microplastics, and we looked into over 7,000 products. So it's a huge data set. That's how much plastic we're talking about. We wanted to present our concern in the form of this report, which is we looked into it from all angles: science, research angle, data angle, and also what these big cosmetic companies are doing about the topic. And we put it all in an analysis and put it out there.
I mean, that is really, really shocking to know that almost 9 out of 10 of our beauty products contain microplastics, liquid microplastics. So following on from the report that Beat the Microbead put out, Cosmetics Europe, which is a trade body, they recently issued a rebuttal, which I read, and it seems to be arguing about the semantics, exactly what you've just touched on. They seem to be more focused on the definition of what a microplastic is, and they state that liquid microplastics used by the mainstream beauty industry are safe for cosmetics. And they also make the point that the emissions in terms of microplastics from the beauty industry is literally a drop in the ocean. I mean, they seem to be quite angry about your report when I read their rebuttal. Yeah. So how do you respond to something like that?
Exactly. It is about semantics, and we need to move further than that and see the impact, and environmental impact or human health impact. And we need to be sure about products or ingredients that we're putting in the market. And we need more information. We need more data, and we need to be sure about things. We need to test them before we put them out there. And that is our view as Plastic Soup Foundation, that there needs to be more data. There needs to be more research. We need to be more sure about things or synthetic polymers that we are putting out there. When it comes to the amount of emission, okay, if you say it is the smallest or drop in the ocean, this drop in the ocean also is tons of microplastics that's releasing, and it's completely unnecessary for this sector. There are so many alternatives. You, as a cosmetic formulator, you know all about it, that we don't have to use plastic in cosmetics, microplastics in cosmetics. And it's plastic in cosmetics is just a design error. We need to fix this error. We need to find alternatives which already exist on a large scale. There's so many brands that are doing it without it. So it's unnecessary. And this is a drop in the ocean, but it's a small amount. It's a low hanging fruit that we can solve very easily. So if you can prevent 2% of microplastics emitting to the environment, why not? Let's do it. What are we waiting for?
Yeah. Although I mean, we first started talking a few years ago when you were part of the initial consultation with the European Commission, who were undertaking this big exercise around microplastics. And I remember you telling me at the time that the cosmetics industry was quite angry about this idea of having to reformulate. And they didn't think they could do it even within a decade. So what happened as a result of that consultation eventually?
Well, it's still underway. There is no legislation yet. There has been quite some delays that we also think is quite unfortunate, because we are now allowing this emission of microplastics every day that we are not doing anything about it. And as I said, that of course, we were part of this consultation and our viewpoint was heard. Was it taken on account completely? We don't think so, because there are such concerns, as I mentioned before, about the definition. And at the end of the day, it's not only about environment, but also socioeconomic factor that the EU has to look into. It's quite expensive to reformulate and remove all of this plastic from your products.
So during the consultation, I know there were lots of trade bodies from the cosmetics industry involved at the time. Did they push for the definition to leave out liquid microplastics?
There has been quite some discussions about it, and there has been some strong opinions about what should be considered as microplastics. And I think it all started with, because microplastic as a term came into a context, in a very different context, which was marine litter. And it was bigger pieces of plastic breaking down in small pieces. And that's how it first got understood. But there are also intentionally added plastic, which might not be in that state. That's how the conversation is very complicated right now, because we are very stuck into defining it in that context. And we need to move forward and beyond that context to see what and EU is definitely doing that. But are we going far enough? I don't think so. And we need to take more precautionary principle, because the solid microplastics, 10 years ago, nobody cared about them. Nobody thought that they were going to be a problem. And right now they're everywhere. And we should learn from this lesson, which was not even that much in past, and take this caution and be really mindful and alert about how we're going to move forward. And another concern that we have is that if we go through this legislation at how it is proposed right now, or this proposal, it's going to be really difficult in the future for consumers, because then cosmetic industries can use microplastic free on their products, and packaging and greenwashing is going to be rampant. We think it's already a difficult topic for consumers to understand. And then after that, it's just going to be a really big mess that we really think it's going to be, it's scary.
And of course, you and I are based in Europe. However, there will be people listening to the podcast today who will be all over the world. And the EU is often very ahead of its time in terms of regulations. So, I mean, microplastic regulations probably aren't in place in the vast majority of countries that our listeners live in. So you can also imagine a situation where the EU is often viewed as the sort of gold standard, and that legislation may be replicated around the world at a later date. So yes, I can see problems arising from this, as you say, and the microplastic free claim sounds terrifying when used in the wrong hands. You say on your website, I mean, your website is fascinating. There was one page in particular that I thought was amazing, which is where you tested an anti-wrinkle cream. And when you tested it in the lab, you found something like 1.4 million particles of microplastics just in this tiny pot of, 50 ml cream. The article you published said that every time you just swiped on a little bit onto your face, you put 90,000 plastic particles on your face. So can you tell me a bit about what was involved in the tests, what the results were? Were you shocked by the results? Because I certainly was when I read it.
It was quite shocking, yeah. It was an anti-aging cream. And of course, we know as an organization, there's plastic in products, but we just wanted to know how much are we talking? And then we had this collaboration at the Free University of Amsterdam. There they did a test of detection of particles. And then they found this shocking result. And then we kind of made the calculation. Okay, if you're using this every day, how much are you putting on your face? And that's 90,000 particles. And what was even more concerning was some of the particles were smaller than the average diameter of human hair, which is like 60 or 80 nanometers. And the smallest was even 1.6 nanometer, if I'm remembering it correctly. And thing with nanoplastic is that they're even more concerning than microplastics because they have ability to move further into your body and your barriers, your blood-brain barrier or your placenta barrier. In case you ingest it, they have ability to go deeper within your body. And that's the most concerning thing. And nanoplastics is something that's also being exempted from this legislation that's coming. And that just doesn't make sense. It's like, this is something that we should be even more worried about, nanoplastics. There are so many studies coming in that showing that nanoplastics they can be more dangerous.
Yeah. We don't know what we don't know, but that's why we have such a thing as the precautionary principle, which is something you could apply to many parts of the beauty industry and haven't done so properly. So what can we do if we want to avoid liquids and nano microplastics in our beauty formulations?
Use the app, be the microbead app. Well, that's one of the fastest way to know if there's plastic inside your cosmetics, and it makes it a very handy tool. But also choose brands that are doing better for the planet. And it can be really difficult to find those brands because there's, of course, a lot of greenwashing and lots of conversation about how eco-friendly and environmental friendly products are. But educating yourself and really looking into if the promises make sense, because a lot of time, if you really look into them, they are just empty words which don't say anything. And really choose for businesses or smaller. I notice in my experience, the small scale businesses are the ones that are more sincere and genuine, but they just don't always have the means to be amplified on that level. So choose local, make your own stuff. Yeah, there are so many things that you can do with home ingredients, and you know a lot about that.
Okay, everyone, I need you to go and download the Beat the Microbead app and try it out for yourself. Obviously, this episode is dropping just before Plastic Free July. It's going to be absolutely amazing to see your responses to this online. Madhuri, it's been absolutely lovely having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been really nice talking with you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. I was shocked by some of the numbers that Madhuri was sharing and the enormity of the amount of plastics people are smearing on their face, their hair, their body, and even in their toothpaste, in their mouths every day. How do you feel about all of this? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please do come and leave me a comment on our social channels, as both the Formula Botanica team and I love hearing from you. Thank you for joining Madhuri and I for this latest episode of Green Beauty Conversations. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do leave us a 5-star review so that other people can enjoy these conversations too. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever your favorite podcast app is, and stay tuned for the next episode. Follow Formula Botanica at Formula Botanica on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Visit our website at formulabotanica.com and sign up for our free online formulation course today.